October 14, 1985, 11:42 p.m., First Avenue, Minneapolis. Prince was in the middle of a rare, intimate performance for just 800 fans when 23-year-old Jake Sullivan, 3 beers past his limit and heartbroken over a recent breakup, stumbled through the security barrier and shouted, "Play something sad, man." "My girl left me!" The crowd groaned. Security moved toward him, and everyone expected the usual script: remove the drunk, continue the show, pretend it never happened. But Prince did something that no one, not the audience, not his band, not Jake himself, could have predicted. He stopped mid-song, looked directly at the heartbroken young man, and said into his microphone, "Come up here. Let's see if we can turn your pain into something beautiful." What happened in the next 17 minutes became the most bootlegged performance in Prince's career, spawned a song that would appear on his next album, and proved that sometimes the most profound art emerges from the most unexpected interruptions. If you believe that true artistry means being open to inspiration from anywhere, even drunk, heartbroken fans, and that the most beautiful music often comes from the most human moments, please subscribe to witness the stories that prove legends aren't just performers, they're healers who understand that pain shared becomes art. Jake Sullivan hadn't planned to make a fool of himself that night. The 23-year-old construction worker from St. Paul had bought his ticket to the First Avenue show 3 months earlier, back when he was still dating Sarah Chen, the woman he'd thought he was going to marry. The ticket was supposed to be a celebration of their 2-year anniversary. Instead, it became his attempt to numb the pain of her walking out of his life just 5 days earlier. Jake had grown up with Prince's music. Like most Minneapolis kids, he'd watched Prince's rise from local phenomenon to global superstar with a mixture of pride and awe. Prince represented something important to young people in the Twin Cities, proof that you could come from their neighborhoods and still create something that mattered to the entire world. But on this October night, Jake wasn't thinking about inspiration or local pride. He was thinking about Sarah's goodbye note, her empty apartment, and the fact that every song on the radio seemed to be about love lost or love that never should have happened in the first place. Jake had started drinking at Murphy's Pub before the show, trying to quiet the voice in his head that kept replaying their last conversation. By the time he reached First Avenue, Jake was operating on emotional autopilot, moving through the crowd without really seeing the people around him. First Avenue was packed but not sold out. One of Prince's periodic surprise shows that he would announce just days in advance. These intimate performances were legendary among Minneapolis music fans. Opportunities to see Prince in the venue where he developed his stage presence, where he still came to test new material and reconnect with his hometown audience. The show had been extraordinary from the opening song. Prince was in one of his experimental moods, mixing familiar hits with new compositions, stretching songs into extended improvisations that showcased both his musical virtuosity and his connection with the crowd. He'd played Purple Rain as a blues ballad, transformed When Doves Cry into a jazz fusion exploration, and created musical moments that existed only for the 800 people lucky enough to be in that room. Jake had been standing near the back, letting the music wash over him without really engaging with it. But when Prince started playing The Beautiful Ones, a song about loving someone who doesn't love you back, something broke inside Jake. The lyrics hit him like physical blows. "Do you want him? Or do you want me? 'Cause I want you." That's when Jake started moving toward the stage, pushing through the crowd without conscious intention. The alcohol, the heartbreak, and the music combined into a perfect storm of emotional vulnerability that overrode every social filter Jake possessed. "Play something sad, man," Jake shouted as he reached the security barrier. "My girl left me!" The words came out louder than Jake had intended, cutting through Prince's vocals and reaching every corner of the venue. The crowd turned to look at him, some laughing, some annoyed at the interruption. Security guards immediately began moving in Jake's direction. Prince stopped singing mid-verse, his guitar chord hanging in the air. For a moment, the venue was completely silent, except for Jake's heavy breathing and the murmur of crowd disapproval. Everyone expected Prince to handle the situation the way most performers would. Ignore the drunk, let security remove him, continue the show without acknowledging the disruption. First Avenue had seen thousands of concerts, and drunk interruptions were an unfortunate part of the live music experience. But Prince did something different. He looked directly at Jake, studying his face with an intensity that made the young man suddenly aware of what he had just done. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment and started to back away, but Prince raised his hand to stop the approaching security guards. "Hold up," Prince said into his microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the venue's sound system. "Let him stay." Prince stepped closer to the edge of the stage, close enough to make eye contact with Jake. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jake," came the barely audible reply. "Jake, how long were you together?" The question caught Jake off guard. 2 years. "She leave you for someone else?" Jake nodded, too emotional to speak. Prince looked at Jake for another long moment, then made a decision that would change both their lives. "Jake, come up here. Let's see if we can turn your pain into something beautiful." Before we reveal what happened when a heartbroken construction worker joined Prince on stage, let me ask you, have you ever been so emotionally raw that you did something completely out of character? Have you ever had someone respond to your vulnerability with unexpected kindness? Share your stories in the comments, because what happened next proves that sometimes the most healing moments come when strangers decide to see our pain as something worth honoring. The crowd's reaction was immediate and mixed. Some people cheered, excited to witness something unprecedented. Others groaned, worried that Prince was about to let a drunk fan ruin what had been an extraordinary show. Jake himself looked terrified, suddenly understanding the magnitude of what was happening. Security guards looked confused, unsure whether to proceed with removing Jake or follow Prince's unexpected instructions. Prince clarified by walking to the side of the stage and extending his hand toward Jake. "Come on up," Prince said. "But I need you to be honest with me about something. Are you too drunk to stand up straight?" Jake considered lying but found himself telling the truth. "I'm drunk, but I can stand. I'm not thinking very clearly right now." "Good enough," Prince replied. "Clear thinking is overrated anyway. Some of the best music comes from cloudy thinking." Jake climbed onto the stage, helped by a roadie who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Standing under the stage lights, facing 800 people, Jake felt simultaneously exposed and strangely protected by Prince's presence. "Jake," Prince said, "I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer honestly. Don't think about it, just tell me what you feel. Can you do that?" Jake nodded. "When did you know it was over?" The question hit Jake like a physical blow. 3 weeks ago. She came home from work different. I could see it in her face that something had changed, but I pretended not to notice." "Why?" "Because I was scared. If I didn't acknowledge it, maybe it wouldn't be real." Prince nodded, then turned to his band. "Give me something in B minor. Slow, let it breathe." The band began playing a simple, melancholy progression that created space for conversation rather than overwhelming it. Prince picked up his acoustic guitar and found a complementary melody, something that supported rather than dominated the moment. "Jake, what's the thing you miss most about her?" "The way she laughed. She had this laugh that made everything else disappear. Even when things were bad, if I could make her laugh, nothing else mattered." Prince played a few notes that somehow captured the wistfulness in Jake's voice, then asked another question. "What's the thing you wish you had said before she left?" Jake's voice broke slightly. "That I knew I hadn't been paying attention. That I got comfortable and stopped trying to deserve her. That if she gave me another chance, I'd remember every day how lucky I was." The words hung in the air, supported by the band's gentle musical backdrop. Prince played another phrase, this one capturing the regret and hope in Jake's confession. "Jake, if she was here right now and she was really listening, what would you want her to know?" Jake closed his eyes, and when he opened them, his voice was steady and clear. "That letting her go was the biggest mistake I'll ever make. That I hope she finds someone who appreciates her laugh from day one. That I'm sorry I had to lose her to figure out how to love her. Prince played these words back through his guitar, transforming Jake's confession into music that somehow made the pain beautiful rather than just devastating. The melody he created was simple but profound, capturing both heartbreak and hope in a way that words alone couldn't achieve. "One more question," Prince said. "If you could write her a song, what would the first line be?" Jake thought for a moment, then spoke words that would become legendary among Prince fans. "I used to think love was permanent, like a tattoo. Now I know it's more like breathing. You don't notice how much you need it until it stops." Prince immediately began playing around that melody, finding musical phrases that enhanced rather than competed with Jake's words. What emerged was the skeleton of a song that felt both deeply personal and universally relatable. For the next 10 minutes, Prince and Jake created something that had never existed before and would never be replicated. It wasn't a traditional song with verses and choruses. It was a musical conversation about love, loss, and the courage to be vulnerable in front of strangers. The band followed Prince's lead, adding subtle percussion, gentle bass lines, and atmospheric keyboards that supported the emotional arc without overwhelming it. The audience watched in complete silence, understanding that they were witnessing something rare and unrehearsable. When the musical conversation naturally concluded, Prince put his arm around Jake's shoulder and addressed the audience. "Sometimes music happens in the studio. Sometimes it happens on stage. Tonight, it happened because Jake was brave enough to share his pain with strangers, and we were lucky enough to be here when he did." The crowd erupted in applause, not just for Prince, but for Jake, for the band, for the unexpected beauty that had emerged from an awkward interruption. Jake, overwhelmed by the experience and the crowd's response, started to leave the stage, but Prince stopped him. "Jake, I want to give you something. Not because you interrupted my show, but because you reminded me why music matters. You turned your pain into art tonight. That's what the best songs do." Prince handed Jake a cassette tape. "This is tonight's show, the whole thing, including what we just did together. I want you to have it, because what happened up here belongs to you as much as it belongs to me." Jake accepted the tape with shaking hands, thanked Prince, and made his way off the stage. The show continued for another hour, but everyone in the venue understood that the night's defining moment had already happened. The story of Jake's interruption and the resulting musical collaboration spread quickly through Minneapolis music circles. Bootleg recordings of the performance began circulating within days, and the story reached Rolling Stone magazine within a week. But the most important impact was on Jake himself. The experience of having his pain acknowledged, honored, and transformed into art gave him a new perspective on his heartbreak. Instead of just wallowing in loss, he began to see his emotions as raw material for something meaningful. 6 months later, Jake enrolled in music classes at the University of Minnesota. He learned to play guitar, studied songwriting, and began performing at open mic nights around the Twin Cities. He never became a professional musician, but music became his way of processing emotions and connecting with others who had experienced similar pain. In 1987, Prince released Sign O' the Times, an album that included a song called The Beautiful Ones, Reprise, a reworked version of the musical conversation he'd had with Jake that night at First Avenue. While the song's lyrics were different from Jake's words, the emotional core remained the same. The idea that heartbreak, when shared honestly, becomes a bridge to understanding, rather than just an experience of isolation. Jake heard the song on the radio while driving to work one morning, and immediately recognized the musical phrases Prince had created during their stage conversation. He pulled over and cried, not from sadness, but from gratitude for having his pain transformed into something that could help other people feel less alone. When Prince died in 2016, Jake was among the thousands of fans who left flowers at First Avenue. He brought a copy of the cassette tape Prince had given him 31 years earlier, along with a note. "Thank you for teaching me that music is what happens when we're brave enough to be real in front of each other." The bootleg recording of that October night remains one of the most sought-after Prince performances among collectors, not because of its technical brilliance, but because it captures a moment of pure human connection transformed into art. Today, Jake Sullivan works as a counselor specializing in addiction recovery, using music therapy techniques he developed based on what he learned from his experience with Prince. He often tells his clients about the night a drunk interruption became a lesson in healing. "Prince could have had me thrown out," Jake tells them. "Instead, he saw that my pain was real and decided to honor it. That taught me something important. Our worst moments can become our most beautiful moments if we're willing to share them with people who understand that vulnerability is not weakness, it's the raw material of art." The recording of Jake and Prince's musical conversation is now part of the Paisley Park Museum collection, displayed as an example of Prince's belief that art should be accessible to everyone, including heartbroken construction workers who've had too much to drink. Prince Rogers Nelson proved that night that true artistry isn't about perfect performances. It's about perfect presence, the ability to recognize when something real is happening, and the wisdom to let it unfold. He showed that the best music often comes not from what we plan, but from our willingness to embrace what we never saw coming. A drunk fan's interruption became a masterclass in empathy, proving that legends aren't just people who can sing and play instruments. They're people who understand that music's highest purpose is healing, and that healing happens when we're brave enough to let strangers witness our pain and generous enough to transform that pain into something beautiful. If this story reminds you that our most embarrassing moments can become our most meaningful ones when met with kindness, and that true artistry means being open to inspiration from the most unexpected sources, please subscribe to keep these stories alive. Because the world needs more artists who understand that the most profound music happens when we stop performing and start sharing what it really means to be human.